Welcome back. Another short work trip out of the way. Came home to some good surprises this time. The rest of the hinges I was waiting on have finally arrived. And I have a lot of hinges. So what we ended up getting was we got hinge material from Aircraft Spruce, which they always nicely package this with a stick to keep this stuff from bending. At the same time, I had already tried to order hinges from Vans. So I have more hinges than I need. These are the P3 hinges. These are the P4 hinges. You can see the size difference between the two. We're going to mate the two of these together to give us one hinge to do these wingtips, which, if I didn't mention it, that's what we're getting ready to start doing. This is going to be the alternative modification method for attaching the wingtips to the RV8 wings. This is not my idea. Several other people have done this. I'm going to pull up a set of instructions and throw it up on the screen there for somebody else that did it. I'll try and leave a link to it below if anybody else is interested. To me, this is the cleanest, nicest way to attach the wingtips and make them very easily removable for future maintenance or access to things. I know there are plenty of people out there that argue if you do too many modifications to your plane, it takes you forever to build it, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. This is my plane. I'm going to build it the way I want to build it. Plus, I have time to kill. I'm still waiting on that fuselage. So, yeah, I think that's about it for that. We'll get into this. I have no idea how long this is going to take me. It's going to require drilling of these hinges, cutting of the wingtips, moving different stuff around. I'll try and go over all that in the voiceover as best I can and show things as they come up to try and make this a little more step-by-step than the normal video, I hope. And we'll get there when we get there. So, is there anything else? Nope, I think that's it for right now. I'll see you all on the voiceover. All right, time for the voiceover part. So overall, this took about 4 hours of total time between the two wingtips over the course of 2 days. Not terribly bad, lots and lots of hole drilling. So what you see me doing right now is I'm starting with the P3 and P4 hinges, and I am splitting them apart and making a combination hinge. So it is going to be a P4 flange on the wing side. It'll be a P3 flange on the wing tip side. And again, that is to space the attachment point far enough out that hopefully you don't end up seeing the zipper effect of the hinge once this is all put together, if there's any tiny gap between the wingtip and the wing. A little confusing. It's going to get more confusing before it gets better, but we'll get there. So for now, I took my hinges, split them apart, recombined them so that I've got my combination hinge. I worked with 3-foot long lengths of hinges. You can only get them in 3-foot or 6-foot from all the suppliers. 6-foot is ridiculously long, and things were back ordered. I decided I could get away with 3-foot and just add a small section. I don't think it's going to hurt anything. The downside was I forgot initially, I still need a long hinge pin, so I had to order separate hinge pins that were 6-foot in length and cut them down. So I've cut them down to a manageable length. I'm not going any shorter until I know what the final length is going to be, but at least they fit inside the wingtip now. I went ahead and cut the hinges to length based on the flange material that is kind of built in. You can sort of see it there on the wingtips. If you have these wingtips, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a molded in flange line where it's meant to tuck under the edge of the RV8 wing, because originally you're supposed to put nut plates in here and screws. So what I did on this first one, this is the right wing. I wasn't 100% sure from the instructions I'm following online exactly where the spacing is supposed to be for where that first flange of the hinge lines up. Ultimately, on this one, I decided to step it in just a little bit to try and give myself some more space so it is not perfectly flush with the edge of the wingtip, which would still be hard to do anyways because that edge is not 100% straight. It was trimmed and cut in various places to get it to fit nicely in the wing several weeks ago when I first fit those up. Anyhow, that's going to come back to bite me here in a little bit. Not terribly bad. What really bit me was something I kind of did myself. There you see me cutting that other hinge pin down, getting it ready, or down to a manageable length. The short pieces, since I didn't have full-length hinges, I made them towards the trailing edge where it's just perfectly flat. I figure it shouldn't be an issue. And since I've had these in the wings, I can tell you it's not an issue with inserting the pin and pulling it out, having two different sections of hinge in there. Anyhow, get it all clamped in place. The P4 side facing inboard towards the wing, and get those all drilled out. So there you can see it. This is the bottom of the wing. P4 is all drilled. There's the top. The P3 is sitting there. Now that P3 is going to get drilled right where it sits. And it seems weird because it's all one wing piece right now, or one wingtip piece, but it's not going to be for long. So currently taking the calipers there, and I was measuring ideally what I'd like the distance to be to roughly put my rivet line right in the center of that other flange. Locked the calipers into place, and then I just used that as a guide, and I went from hole to hole, making little tick marks, which I'm now connecting the dots with that long flexible ruler you see there. I chose to go from the holes because that's a known distance. If I tried to measure from that edge, like I said, that edge is not the same thickness all the way across because of trimming. So I figured the hole was a better place to line those up. And all of this is purely aesthetics. That rivet row obviously needs to be in the middle of that flange on the hinge, but as far as the spacing goes, there's nothing that says it has to be any certain way. I am lining them up with the other row of rivets, though, just for aesthetics. So once I had my long line, I just took the small machinist square I had and just drew a connecting line straight across the existing hole to where I want the new hole to be. And now I'm moving the clecos down one hole so I can expose the other one, and I'm making the next set of lines so I can go through and drill all the holes in between. In the end, came out pretty good. They all look like they're perfectly lined up just like they should be. A couple of places, just because of how things were trimmed, I got a little close to edge distance on the hinge material, but it's only one or two spots. I think it's going to be all right. Plus, everything on the wingtip side, the fiberglass, is going to get riveted in place, but it's also going to get glued in place with some Pro Seal just to make sure the rivets don't pull through the fiberglass. Lots and lots of stuff going on here. Flipped it over, doing the same thing on the other side. I don't even honestly know how many holes it was, but it was a lot. Just like before, move the clecos, mark the last set of holes, and go back and get them all drilled out. And I am drilling through the wingtip and the hinge at the same time, so I'm drilling that hinge in place. There you can see the holes all done up. You can see the bottom through there as well. Everything's clecoed in place. So now it's locked together. Verifying what I'm supposed to do for the next step, and the next step is to mark out that flange that's covering the hinge portion that needs to attach to the wing so you can go cut it out. Now, when you had the wingtips on before, when you were just drilling them without the hinges, you should have marked roughly where that cut needs to be so that you know how it has to go. It won't sit perfectly unless you got a wingtip that you managed to trim and get 100% perfect in there. Mine were pretty close. I was happy with the way they were, and it should have come out well, except you can see I'm out there cutting it right now. And definitely wear a mask while you do this. You could see some of that fiberglass wafting up, but there I just broke one of my cutoff discs. And when I went to start again, instead of following my line, it kind of got away from me a little bit, and it cut more into the wingtip side of things than I wanted it to. And you're going to see what the result of that is here in just a minute when I get this thing attached to the wing. So you cut both of those strips off. You want to keep them intact because you need to use them as spacers for the wing side, which is why you wanted to drill all of this stuff together. There I'm attaching the hinge again. You can see the P4 hinge sticking out prominently now, and that's going to slide in and interface with the wing and create my attach point for that. So move you over here so you can see the right wing as I get ready to put this thing in. There's the strips. I'm getting them pre-positioned so I can use them as spacers. It's a little fiddly. I probably could have split the hinges apart and put the half in the wing, but I wanted to do it as one continuous unit just to make sure there was no alignment issues. So in my opinion, it was worth it to do it this way just to make sure it's all perfectly aligned. So there was the bottom. That's the top side of the wing in there. And I can already see I've got a problem right down there. Of course, it has to be the top side of the wing. I'll take some pictures of it. So this is the part where I cut too much into the wing, and the result is you can see the hinge. I'll get you a closer shot here, but you can see a small section of it right there. So thankfully it's just fiberglass. I've got some fiberglass tape on the way. I'm going to put a strip in before I permanently attach that hinge. I'll put a strip in and I'll build that back up with some flocks and some resin and sand it all down, and you'll never know it was there. At least that's the plan. So on to the left wing. Exact same process, except I know better now to be more careful when I cut. If you've got to, make sure you undercut as opposed to overcutting, and just take it slow. I'm not going to have you sit through as much of this side as the other one because the process is pretty much the same, but you get a slightly closer view. I think I had a better positioning on the camera on this one, so I'm going to have some of it in here. Just using the clamps to help hold that hinge in place. On this side, I didn't even mess around with trying to space anything. I just put it on whatever the farthest edge was, lined it up straight, and that's what I clamped it down to. That ended up working much, much better. There you can see I was using that C-clamp to help hold that flexible ruler as it went around the corner. And as I work with this wingtip, you can see it's got a bit of flex to it, quite a bit of flex. even when it's attached to the wing, it still retains a lot of give in those big wide open middle sections. What some people have done, what I'm also going to do with some of that fiberglass tape when I get it, is I'm going to put some foam rod in there, like little mini false spars along the skin in 2 different places, and just fiberglass tape over it and resin it in place, and that should add some stiffness without really adding any extra weight to the wingtips. Should make that a lot more solid. So this part was on to the next day. My goal for this entire session, well, 2 sessions now, is just basically to get the hinges attached and get them onto the wings and somewhat functional so I could start working out the rest of the details. Something I didn't do on the other side because I knew I had to take it apart after I saw my mistakes. I didn't dimple anything. For this one, I went ahead and dimpled the wing first. All those holes got to get dimpled. I did deburr them all. And then I'm going to go through and countersink all of the fiberglass. So as soon as I get these hinges off here, I did mark the hinges, by the way. I'm sure I could figure out because one is longer than the other, but I marked them top, bottom, and which side was the front. Marking the end of the flanges so I know where I need to cut. Off camera, I did already have that wingtip back up in place on the wing and marked exactly where the seam line is going to be, so I know where to cut for there as well. And yeah, now I'm just using my deburr tool to countersink it. Here you see I'm going to try the actual countersink bit. I didn't really like the way it was working, especially since I had that flange to work around, so I just decided to stick with the deburr tool. And the reason I'm doing both sides, the side that's on the flange that's going to get cut off needs to be dimpled because it's going to sit underneath those, or it needs to be countersunk because it's going to sit underneath the dimples on the wing skin when it acts as a spacer later. So that's why I'm doing those. And then the other ones obviously are going to stay exposed on the wingtip, and you'll have flush rivets down in there. And that's also the side that's going to get the Pro Seal on the hinge on the inside. Time to cut this one. Measured twice, cut once on this one. Just double checking where that end cut needed to be. The problem, once you start cutting, the whole thing gets covered in that fiberglass dust, and it makes lines disappear really, really quickly. So there you go, all cut out. Time to get the hinges installed so I can go put this thing on the wing, see how it fits. I do need to put some screws in the ends, the leading edge ends of the hinges, just to make sure I've got a positive stop so the hinge rod can't go any further than it needs to. There you can see the hinge material left on the other wing. Same process as before. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed it. I'll try and leave a link below for the modification instructions that I followed. Stop by, check out the podcast if you haven't done that yet. Leave some comments if you got any questions. This was a pretty rewarding thing to do once I finally got to see it on there and it looks the way I was hoping it would. But I'll leave you with a couple of pictures of what this one looked like. Much tighter lines. I'm not going to have hardly any finish work, I think, to do on this one. And yeah, next up we'll be doing some fiberglass stuff. So stick around and I will see you all in the next one.